Hello everyone and welcome to Star Wars Galaxy. My name is RJ and today we're talking about the next two regions of space in my Galaxy Overview series, the Expansion Region and the Mid-Rim. The Expansion Region is the next area of space rimward of the Inner Rim. Despite its size, the Expansion Region contains next to no important planets, and next to no important anything really. It's pretty bare in even Legends content, but we'll continue anyway. The two important planets that the Expansion Region contains are Umbara and Mimban. Umbara is the site of the famous Pong Krell betrayal and some of the best episodes of the Clone Wars series, which, if you didn't know, is being brought back for 12 episodes. But you already knew that. Every single Star Wars YouTuber has already made a video about it, and there's literally no way that I am the only Star Wars YouTuber you're subscribed to. But back to the Expansion Region. Umbara, also known as the Shadow Planet, because of a lack of sunlight that reaches the surface, was an isolated planet located in what was called the Ghost Nebula. This was a large cloud of gas which severely isolated Umbara from the rest of the galaxy. However, unlike most isolated civilizations, Umbara was actually slightly more advanced than the rest of the galaxy. If you've ever seen the Clone Wars, you know what happened here, and if you don't, then I won't spoil it for you. Go watch for yourself, it's great. Also, this lady here, she's Sly Moore, she's also an Umbaran. And that's about it for Umbara, so now we're going to move on to Mimban. Mimban is the planet from Solo where Han meets Chewbacca. It also got a mention in the Clone Wars during the episode Rookies, where most of Domino Squad dies. Rip Heavy. It was largely made up of rainforest, marshes, and swamps. It rained there frequently and was perpetually overcast. The planet was the site of many conflicts between the local Mimbanese people and the mining operations due to Mimban being very resource-rich. And that's about it for the expansion regions. In Legends, the Expansion Region was an experiment at letting corporations run planets and star systems, sort of like the corporate sector, but an ancient version. Anyways, it's at about this point in the galaxy that we get into the planets that were exploited by coreward regions, and that could be a possible reason for why we know so little about the Expansion Region. And the two planets that I was able to find information on seem to be exceptions to this rule, mainly due to isolation and resistive natives. It's possible that since these planets were exploited for resources so early on in their Republic history that they never really developed into the types of planets we get to see on the big screen or even in the books. Native species that were encountered before they reached the space exploration levels of technology, and their cultures and planets get destroyed by corporations. Even if later on this gets corrected, the damage would be irreversible and the planets would be decimated. The species would likely never do anything significant as their entire culture was destroyed and they kind of just assimilated into the Republic, if they ever even do that at all. But anyways, that's just a thought, although it's not far off in Legends. It's just that the exploitation happened a lot later, and not during the colonization of the expansion region. Well, that was kind of depressing. So we're going to move on to the Mid-Rim. The Mid-Rim is kind of like the last line before reaching the truly backwater planets of the Outer Rim and beyond. It also happens to be a mix of planets that could easily be classified into either the more coreward or more rimward planets, in terms of how well off the species was. Strangely enough, while there's a lot of information on the individual planets of the Mid-Rim, there's limited info on the actual region as a whole. What I did manage to find was also a little baffling. A good portion of the planets in the Mid-Rim seem to be better off than those in the expansion region, and some even in the Inner Rim. Don't get me wrong, there's some pretty bad off planets in the Mid-Rim, but a good amount seem to be fairly well off. For instance, there's Bothawui, which for some reason does not have a canon page on Wikipedia, the home of the Bothan species, and the Bothan Spynet. This is basically the biggest organization of spies and information traffickers in the galaxy. Because of its lucrative spying business, Bothawui was a fairly prosperous world and a center for trade and business. There was also Malastare, home of the Dugs, and possibly the Gran. Wikipedia seems to be unsure about which planet they come from. The Malastare page says they migrated there, but the Gran page claims that Malastare is their homeworld. So, think what you will, but I'm going to go with it actually is their home planet, despite it being different in Legends. Just makes it all simpler given what we do know, and I also like two species planets. Also, the senator from Malastare is a Gran, and it just makes more sense to me that Gran would be native to the planet if he got elected. However, for those of you who remember this Gran, it could be a bit confusing since he was the representative from the now Legends homeworld of the Gran, Kinyen, in the expansion region. Kinyen does still exist, only it has no mention of being the Gran homeworld. As of right now, it is unknown what planet this Gran senator is from, but I still think it's easier to have him be from a non-Gran homeworld planet than to have the Dugs be represented by a Gran. But back to the planet at hand. Malastare held a large importance due to it having a large amount of fuel reserves in its planet. Surprisingly enough, they were not exploited for their fuel and had relative autonomy in the Republic. Also, pod racing. Next up is Ithor, which is the home of the Ithorian species. It had large jungles and the people were very protective of its ecosystem. Then there's Takodana from The Force Awakens, home of Maz Kanata's castle, and 1,000 years prior, a battleground between the Sith and Jedi. Takodana was a neutral world that did not really take part in galactic affairs. It was prized for its neutrality and as being a balance between the core worlds and the rim ones. Going coreward from the rim, it was the last stop before you truly left the frontier, and going rimward from the core, it was the last place of civilization before you hit the untamed outer rim. After that comes Saria, which is the home of the Saurian species, aka Ki-Adi-Mundi's species. Little is known in canon, but in legends it was a world that frowned upon technology and was very in tune with nature. Saria also was relatively isolated from the rest of the galaxy. And lastly is Gli-Anselem, a tropical ocean world and home to the Nautolan species, and apparently Tobias Beckett, and that's all for the well-off planets in the Midrim. They all seem to be fairly autonomous and free from exploitation from the Republic, as well as large corporations. Legends, this was because the Republic put less friendly business policies on the Midrim than they did on the expansion region, so the corporations chose to stay in the expansion region. As a result, the Midrim was colonized much more gradually, and most planets ended up like the ones I was just talking about, relatively untouched by the resource-hungry corporations. Then comes the less happy side of the Midrim, the planets that didn't fare so well in the galaxy. First up is the well-known Kashyyyk, home of the Wookiees. While at first glance the planet may seem like it did pretty well, with its large forests, abundance of natural resources, and location on a relatively large hyperspace lane convergence, however, the Wookiee people were commonly used as slaves throughout the galactic history due to their large size and physical prowess. During the Empire, they were used to build a Death Star and other machines of war, and occasionally they were sent to the spice mines of Kessel. They were frequently attacked and hunted by their neighbors, the Trandoshans, who lived in the same solar system as the Wookiees on the planet Trandosha. Trandosha was a verdant jungle world and was never really exploited, but it made more sense to put it here with Kashyyyk. Also in the Midrim was Naboo, and I know what you're thinking. Naboo? Naboo is a great planet. What the hell happened there? This thing happened there. It's here that we see the planets that got royally screwed over by corporations in the Midrim. Like I said above, corporations like to stay in the expansion region during the colonization period. At least in Legends they did. But after that, they were sure as hell ready to exploit the Midrim worlds that they could. So you get things like the Trade Federation blockade of Naboo, or like the Corporate Alliance blockade of Malastare. The only reason I put Naboo with the worse off planets and Malastare on the better off side is because the Republic actually sent a fleet to deal with the Corporate Alliance on Malastare. Naboo got 2 Jedi sent off the record. Both of these planets were probably exploited due to their unique natural resources. Naboo had large reserves of plasma, which could be used for energy and weapons apparently, and Malastare had special Malastarian fuel. Next up is Ord Mantell, which, in Legends, was an exploited world since its discovery. The colonists initially drove the native Savrip into the wilderness of the planet before the Republic officially placed bounties on them. Overhunting led to the near extinction of the species. Later on, the planet eventually turned into a polluted junkyard with several large cities and little else. During the Clone Wars, it was a base of operations for Black Sun and Darth Maul's Shadow Collective. Then there's Falleen, the homeworld of the Falleen species. They were humanoid, reptile-like species that could emit pheromones to attract mates, or really anyone that came their way. The planet was the site of an Imperial biological weapons test in Legends, and was the cause of death of many natives. Then there's Jedha, and, well, enough said. And finally, Wobani is also in the Midrim. That's the planet with the labor camp that Jyn Erso is on at the beginning of Rogue One. I think the presence of a labor camp for Imperial prisoners speaks for itself. And now for the fun part, the why. Why do these planets get screwed while the others could easily be core worlds? Okay, maybe not core, but inner-rim or colonies for sure. And, well, there's no one particular reason. Planets like Gli-Anselem and Takodana were likely saved because they were populous tourist destinations. So any exploitation of natural resources or natives would not only be bad for the tourism industry, but also be highly publicized. The Republic likely wants to have such atrocities not be hologramized for all to see, and so these planets were left alone. The same goes for Malastare, but its popularity is probably more because of its pod racing than its environment. Then there's planets like Ithor and Saria, which were so protective of their flora and fauna that any attempt at exploitation would be met with fierce outcry by not only the natives, but also members of the core who would want to preserve the rare ecosystems. That's not to say they wouldn't want to preserve other ecosystems as well, but Saria and Ithor were both pretty special cases, so they get special treatment, I guess. Bathawui is an easy one. It gets a pass due to its spy net. This works both because it would be a waste to remove such a spy net, and because making the species with the largest information gathering and espionage network angry is probably a bad idea. And that leaves the planets that don't have these advantages. Planets that don't have a bustling tourism operation, environmental conservationists backing, or political power, but do have resources and people to exploit. and so these planets are out of the public eye. They exist so far from the core and have no reason for the core worlds to care if they get invaded, blockaded, exploited, or destroyed. I mean, seriously, look at Jeddah. Do you think they'd get away with that if people passed by it every time they went from Coruscant to Corellia? See what happened when they tried to do that? The destruction of Alderaan was gasoline to the fire of the rebellion. Something like that happened during the Republic era, there would have been a civil war. And so, the Mid-Rim remains the last stop before the Outer Rim, where the lucky few are spared from colonists, the Republic, and the corporations that devastated the rest. And that's all for me. Damn, that was long. Way more planets in the Mid-Rim than I thought. Next time will probably just be the Outer Rim. Then probably wild space in the unknown regions. And that would wrap up the series. After that, I might do some videos on the other types of regions in the galaxy, like the Western Reaches, Corporate Sector, the Slice, stuff like that. We'll see. So, I'm done. See you next time. Make sure to click that subscribe button. It does something. Probably. That bell also does something. You can click that too. I'll click all the buttons. Like this one. That one. Ooh, definitely that one. Well, maybe not that one. You can also follow me on Twitter. I tweet sometimes. Make a comment and ask a question. Might do a video on it. And if I do, I'll credit you as coming up with the idea. That's all I got. Bye.